A second assassination attempt was made against Donald Trump, and the perpetrator has some connections to Ukraine. We'll talk about this in the situation report, as well as about what's happening along the front line, where Ukraine and Russia trade territory in Kursk, where one side advances and the other side advances at a different direction. We'll also talk about reconnaissance drones. The Russians are suffering such heavy losses that they find very innovative versions and attempts to save their drones from Ukrainian attacks. But we'll talk about this, international aid, and so much more in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. Russian attacks are continuing in the air. Basically, every day attacks are happening. In the latest one on the night towards Saturday, I think it was, the Russians used up to 76 Shahid drones, so a massive attack. But the Ukrainians took down over 70 of those with either anti-aircraft fire or electronic warfare. Let's switch to the front line, and here both sides trade territory. The Russians are reporting an attack at Yotkino. So far, I do not see that it has been successful. The Russians are saying that it was a sabotage and reconnaissance troop, which would be an indication that it's small infantry groups, no mechanized attack at this point. So far, I have not seen anything to the contrary. The Ukrainians have advanced, though, in the southern area here of the former Glushkovo pocket. They have reached the town of Veseloe, which is here. We have a geolocation for this, where they are at the southern part of the town and have reached it at this point. The Ukrainians have also advanced to the east of it. Here they have reached the town of Medveshe. This is at this point here. We see there's no confirmation that they have taken the town, but they are operating around it as of now. So they are no longer very far away from Glushkovo, roughly 6 to 7 kilometers from the confirmed position at this point. And this would obviously threaten the lines of supply for the Russians operating in the direction of Snagost over the past few days. Because there is where the Russians themselves keep advancing. We have geolocations south of Snagost, the Russians here at this point, and down at Gordivka to the west of it. So far, I do not have a confirmation that Gordivka has fallen, but as we can see, the deep state map has more or less adjusted the positions already. We have the Russians roughly here and at this point. So the Russians have pushed the Ukrainians back from this area where they have recently been occupying it themselves. To the east of it, we have the Russians entering the town of Obuchovka, but from what I've seen, they have been pushed out again. They suffered losses and were retreating. So as of now, we do know that the Russians have reached Obuchovka, but whether they gained a foothold in here is unclear. But this would indicate that the map is no longer accurate. The gray zone has to be extended to this point. So the contested area, as we've seen the Russians operating in this area. But as said, the occupation of the town, or the liberation from the Russian side, so far is not confirmed. The Ukrainians are claiming that they encircled some Russians in Kremennoe. As of now, I have no further information than the Ukrainian claim. I cannot confirm it, that it's actually true at this moment, and I do not have an information about the number. Regarding the troop strength here, it shouldn't be too much, maybe a mid to high two-digit number, but probably not several hundred. But we'll see over the next few days what happens here. The Russians have also advanced in the southeast. Here now we have Russian presence in the north of Borki. That has been confirmed at this point. We have the Russians at the northernmost houses. There have been claims that Borki was taken by the Russians, but other Russian mill bloggers are confirming that the Ukrainians still have presence in the west of town. We likely in this area here, and we had the Ukrainians build fortifications and occupying it in this area a couple of days ago. There's no confirmation that this fortification has been taken yet. So while the Russians keep advancing in the Kursk region, the Ukrainians are advancing themselves as well. The Russians are mostly advancing in these directions here, pushing towards the western part of the Kursk operation. They are advancing in the south in this direction, while the Ukrainians themselves did operations in these directions here and are coming from the west as well. So overall, supposedly it's even a planned operation. That's what the Ukrainian president said about this, but we'll have to see how it turns out over the next coming days. Let's switch over to the Kharkiv region. Here, nothing has changed on the ground, but in the air, things are changing. The Ukrainians are saying in strike drones, so that should be mostly FPV drones, but also bomber drones. Both sides are more or less equal in strength, but the glide bomb attacks are being reduced further and further. This is, according to the Ukrainians, because of their own successes against the Russian reconnaissance drones. This is likely an area where the Ukrainians are operating their own interceptor drones. And there we had, within a couple of days, video evidence of over 200 intercepted small reconnaissance drones. This is more than in overall last year combined. The Ukrainians have mastered it by now to take down those reconnaissance drones. In a past situation report roughly a week ago, I already mentioned that the Russian milk bloggers are panicking because of this, because they're saying if the Ukrainians manage to take out those, we have a huge disadvantage. The Russians right now have reduced the duration for their kill chain down to a point where they can hunt down HIMARS before they can withdraw, as their reconnaissance drones are all over the area, and the information they gather are being sent back to their own artillery, to their own tactical ballistical missile system, to their own air force, and the decisions for strikes are being done so rapidly that the Ukrainians have been in serious trouble. But for that they need reconnaissance, and those drones are so cheap that shooting them down with scarce air defense systems was more or less uneconomical. But now the Ukrainians started taking them down with drones, which is far cheaper, and they've been successful to a degree that is massive. The Russians have found a way to fight it. At least that's with some sarcasm from my side, because they moved to a method that would be more appropriate for an elementary school bus. What is written on here is whoever takes it down is and then it's a slur for homosexuals starting with an F. I don't think YouTube will be too happy for me to mention that word, but this is the Russian way of this is actually happening. Russians are writing on their drones, whoever takes it down is an F. And so on. That is, I have to admit, when I saw that was one of the most funniest thing that I've seen in weeks, or if not in months, in this context. Also, the Ukrainians are reporting that conscripts are being used in logistical tasks in the rear areas here at Kharkiv, in the Kharkiv front. No confirmation whether they mean inside of Kharkiv itself or just in the area like Shebekino. What they do confirm, though, is that the Russian conscripts are not being used for combat operations in this area. Further to the east, on the eastern front, the Russians had a small success west of Pishane. They gathered an area of 900 meters to the west here in this direction. Roughly this area has now fallen into Russian hands as well, meaning the Russians have crept a little closer to the Oskil at this point, which is obviously highly unpleasant for the Ukrainians. But that was it. North of the Seversky Donetsk, there are some claims of Russian successes in this area, Bryanske forest, but I didn't see any evidence, so nothing has changed from my side. Further south, Siversk direction, though, the Russians were successful. They have published a video where they show their flag in the center of Spirne. So Spirne is about to fall. Now, usually in the past, they would show their flag on the westernmost building if they actually took the whole of the town. Them showing it in the center means that in the west, there's still probably some Ukrainian presence, but the Russians definitely advanced inside of the town, or the remnants of the town, and are putting pressure now on the western part of it. Spirne has held back the Russians in this area for many months as well, and now the Russians have had some success in it. To the west, in the Chasiv Yar area, north of it we have no change, but south of it we actually have two significant developments here. First of all, we have a geolocation directly south of Ivanivske. The Russians have been spotted at this area here. Let me mark it in for you just to illustrate. They have been roughly here, so either south or towards the west, probably south. They have advanced here, but this isn't the big change. We have a second one where Russian soldiers, I think Chechens at this point, waving their flags and showing their flags west of the canal. And they actually have reached to this point. Where they've come through is unclear, but this is showing again what I said a couple of times ago, what I said over the past few weeks, that we have geolocations far beyond what the deep state map, but other pro-Ukrainian mill bloggers are showing as well on their maps. I think the front line at Klishivka is significantly further west. We had now we have a position here. We had them here. We had them here at this point. Now we had them down here, but also in this area here. Where exactly the front line is, how permanent it is, I cannot say. But now we know the Russians have actually reached this point here, which meaning they have not just crossed the Seversky Donetsk Canal, but they have also advanced another 1.5 kilometers further to the west, showing that the gray zone should probably be extended by now to roughly this part here. To which degree this is actually Russian occupied is a different story, but it shows that the Russians have advanced significantly further than we've seen so far on most pro-Ukrainian maps in the past. Further south, I have no change in the Donetsk area, nothing I can confirm. In Pokrovsk area, we have some Russian advances, not in the direction of Pokrovsk itself, but they have advanced in Shelane Pershe, which is down here. Here we have a geolocation as well of the Russians, showing them in the center of town itself. I cannot say that it's fully occupied yet, but it shows that the Russians have reached further, probably to this point more or less. As of now, they have advanced further to the south here as well. The two majors, the Russian mill bloggers, are saying that logistics has to be revamped. They have to bring it forward. And this is the reason right now for their advance in the Pokrovsk region to slow down. At the same time, they are also saying that the Ukrainians bring in additional reinforcements. This is why the whole Russian advance towards Pokrovsk has slowed down massively. They basically haven't advanced at all anymore over the last 2 weeks. They gained something west of Novorodivka. They gained a little bit in Rodivka, but that was it over the last, I think, 2 weeks or longer. So for now, at least, the Russians are stopped. As said, two majors are saying this is because of logistical reasons. At the same time, the Russian strikes against bridges continue, showing again that the Russians try to shape the battlefield there and to prepare and to reduce the Ukrainian logistics here. But overall, so far, it doesn't show an effect yet. The Russians also tried to get into Rink. So far, Rimyk, I think, Rimyk. So far, I cannot confirm that they have been considerably successful as of now, but they are pushing in this direction. There was a video of an attack of 46 armored vehicles in the direction of Hostre, published the past few days, but this was probably the attack where they reached Hostre. So the Ukrainians here are being threatened with encirclement. As said in the past, I think they are withdrawing as of right now. This at least would be the likely expectation. Further to the south, the Russians have also advanced, and this is another reason why they should be withdrawing from this point here. We have them in the south of Maximilianivka. So the Russians are now at this point having advanced further, and with their presence in Hostre and with their presence in here, meaning that every Ukrainian in these areas here has no real infrastructure anymore to support them. This is why I believe that we'll see a withdrawal from this cauldron here very soon from this pocket very soon over the next few days. Further to the south, the Russians managed to advance northeast of Vodiane. Here they gained 3 tree lines. Sorry, it was here. Here they gained the 3 tree lines in this area here. Roughly this. I obviously painted it too big. This area has fallen to the Russians as well. This is a depth of 3.8 kilometers, so 3.8 kilometers in this direction, 2.8 kilometers at this here. By taking those 3 tree lines, we have a geolocation of this as well, where they have reached this point, so they gained some additional ground. Further to the east, further to the south, east of Vuhledar, the Russians also managed to advance. They had recently taken that mine here. They've also taken that, entered the mine here and solidified themselves, but there seem to still be Ukrainians fighting in the side of the mine of Vodiane. But here they've taken it, and now they've taken the buildings to the direct southeast of it, getting closer towards Vuhledar at this point. But that was it for about actual change in territory. We have some geolocations, for instance, of fighting here close, directly in the gray zone here, but I do not see that anything has changed as well as on the Dnipro. So this was it with the change in territory. On the Black Sea, about the Black Sea, the Ukrainian former Colonel Mashovets has said that the Russians are only using Kaliber cruise missiles now from their submarines. They have several submarines that are capable of launching those cruise missiles, and obviously submarines are much more difficult to be attacked with naval drones, as they can launch from, I think those should be able to launch while being submerged, and this makes it close to impossible to intercept them except if they enter port at this point. So the Russians are being forced to no longer use their cruise missile carriers except maybe from the Azov Sea. In the Black Sea itself, only the submarines can now operate. Also, there are reports that the Russians have started GPS jamming in the area of Novorossiysk, another sign of how they want to prevent possible Ukrainian strikes, either with Storm Shadow or with Scalps towards the naval base of Novorossiysk, where the latest satellite pictures showed that they have evacuated their fleet from anyways. Overall, we have the Ukrainian head of the GOR, the military intelligence. He says, according to his analysis, according to their information, Russia will want to decide the war in 2025 because they know that if they don't win in 2026, so they want to do the decisive steps next year that allows them to win the war in 2026. If they haven't won by them, according to Budanov, the Russians are aware that they will have no longer a chance to be a global power, a global superpower in the next 30 years by having not won the war decisively by 2026. Russia is, according to these reports, expecting a worsening of the economic and socioeconomic situation at the beginning of 2025, which will coincide with more difficult recruitment. I made a video about Russia's recruitment problems where I basically already did in the past the arguments that Budanov now said. I'm going to link it to you up here on the symbol in case you are interested, in case you have missed that video and want to watch it, while Russia actually has a recruitment problem as of now. This is basically summarizing what Budanov does here. All the small fragments we've heard in the past of the Russians having too few workers by now, as a lot of people have left the country, others have been expended in the military, and thus they have too few workers to run their economy at the same time. They have trouble with resources. They need to pay more for both workers, again in that video about recruitment, as well as for material. And at the same time, the Russian government is spending so much on the war that they are running into financial problems as well. We've talked about it in the past that the taxes have been increased, a sign of Russia needing more money. And recently they even issued loans that pay a 16% interest. And those were 20-year-long loans. You can calculate yourself how much Russia has to pay back for the money they are taking right now. It's an absurd number. This is basically putting the government budget on your credit card. As of now, this is what Russia has to do right now to keep the war flowing. So the Budanov analysis is probably correct. If Russia doesn't decide the war in the next 1.5 years, it's going to be in trouble for the longer term. At the same time, he said that the invasion into Kursk here has shown the Russian public, as well as the strikes in the Russian rear, that the invincibility of Russia is not actually the case. Obviously, fighting inside of Ukraine is one thing, but if those Ukrainians that are being looked down upon are capable of invading Russia itself after 2.5 years of war, this shows how weak the Russian army has to be to allow for this. And this is also attacking the legitimacy and the confidence inside of Russia as of now. He said Russia will have no choice to either do a new mobilization or decrease the intensity of its warfare. Again, basically the argument I already made in that video in case you've missed it. The report is also saying that the Russians are lacking, I already mentioned that they actually lack 4.8 million workers as of now. This is how dire the Russian worker situation has come by now. In troop generation, we have Russian mill bloggers mentioning more and more examples where specialists are being sent into assault units and thus die in assaults. They talk about electronic warfare specialists, about reconnaissance specialists, about snipers, machine gunners, cyber hackers. All of them have been used as cannon fodder in assault attacks, and more examples are coming up. We've talked about it in the past, and in the last situation report, I mentioned those drone pilots that have been expended as infantry, supposedly because they criticized their new commander. He punished them by sending them into frontal assaults and thus losing specialists with a long experience in doing their job. The Russian Minister of Defense, Belousov, has now intervened and said he recognized he heard the problems and has said an investigation is being started, so we'll have to see what it turns out. Then we have General Apti Auladinov, Alaudinov, I think is his name. He's the Chechen general. He said that Chechens that have been taken prisoner in Kursk should stay in Ukraine because Russia doesn't want them back. It's basically against their honor. They should have died fighting. They should have provoked the Ukrainians to shoot them after being taken prisoner. But according to what he says right now, the Chechens shouldn't be taken prisoner and Russia shouldn't take them back. Then we have news from Oriol. In Oriol, the Russians are now, the local government is now giving policemen a prize of 10,000 rubles if they find Russians, migrants, or stateless persons to and help them sign a contract with the Russian military. This is obvious. This gives them an incentive to find people to sign contracts, which makes it likely that they are going to increase pressure towards those persons to. And then it's pure speculation. We heard it in the past that Indians were given contracts where they didn't even know what they were signing, and they were signing their contract with the Russian military. This makes it obviously far more likely that that Russian policemen will give other people that don't understand what they are doing contracts and have them sign, because now they have a direct financial incentive to do so. Then Russia is also saying they're going to increase their military. Now the new plan is 1.5 million soldiers, an increase of an additional 180,000 from the last number that they were aimed for. As said, in total, we'll have to see how much Russia can achieve this with their current recruitment numbers, or if they have to resort to a new mobilization. Troop generation in Ukraine, we have news as well. Ukraine has said that in September 2023, so 1 year ago, they started production of 155mm shells for the NATO caliber artillery. So far, they had not produced it. They have started it. And the general defense industry production, the output has doubled between March 2023 and September of 2024, doubled. And now they aim for a tripling of the number since March 2023 until the end of this year. The numbers are going significantly up when it's going to production. One of the examples is the Bogdana self-propelled artillery. Now the Ukrainians, according to their own accord, are producing 16 of them a month. When the war began, they had one prototype. Now they're producing 16 a month, according to their own accord. Then the commander-in-chief, Sirsky, has said that they are going to increase and prolong increase the duration of the training for fresh recruits. This is clearly him addressing the issue that we've talked about in the past, that the training is fairly small. The official time was reduced to 6 weeks only, and for soldiers to be aware that they are undertrained will be a big hit for the morale in comparison to them feeling confident in their ability. And here Sirsky wants to obviously address it. He also mentioned that probably they're going to establish a school for trainers to improve training. This will be essential for Ukraine to keep up its momentum, to keep up the long-term capability of recruiting, to not only make better soldiers, but also help those who are being called up, giving them the confidence that their training at least is adequate at the same time. At the same time, the Ukrainian president said the Western nations have only delivered enough material for 4 of the 14 brigades that are being stood up. So we see that the Western side still is lacking a lot of help when it comes, still lacking a lot of the aid it could do. In the political sphere, we obviously need to talk about Ryan Ruth. He was the wannabe assassin of the Republican presidential candidate, Donald Trump. It's being spread around a lot, and obviously the propaganda is saying that he was a Ukrainian soldier. The Ukrainian Foreign Legion said they were never affiliated whatsoever with him. He claimed that he is going to recruit for them. He set up a website, and more messages are coming up. He put numbers of recruiters on that website without their permission. He was claiming he had contact to thousands of Afghan soldiers that he wanted to send to Ukraine. He had plans to recruit people for Taiwan. He was thinking about forging passports so Afghans from Pakistan can leave the country and then flying to Poland to help. He had ideas that the US could use transport planes from Iraq to transport Arabs from the Free Syrian Army towards Ukraine to help fight there. He was basically, from everything we see, he was completely off the rails when it came to this topic, had no real connections, was claiming a lot without doing a lot at the same time. At the same time, though, according to his now deleted Twitter account, he voted for Trump in 2016, but he was a fanatic supporter of Ukraine, and that would lead to the conclusion that the current expectation that Trump will force Ukraine to sign a peace deal, losing a big chunk of territory, might have motivated him. But as he is still alive, we will probably find out more in the future. The important thing here is that the Russian information operation obviously is going big scale now, trying to, and I've already seen comments like a Ukrainian soldier tried to assassinate Donald Trump. This is not true. He was never a Ukrainian soldier. He was a madman running around Kiev, and according to rumors was even deported by the Ukrainians because they couldn't take him anymore. Press contacts he had, he was harassing to a degree that they had to block him. He was a complete madman, completely off the rail, and apparently he tried, that led him to conduct an assassination attempt. International support, we have news. Denmark has announced they're going to send additional F-16s to Ukraine at the end of the year. Number is unclear, the exact date as well, but more F-16s will come this year. This year. Then from France, we have news. Aubert et Duval, the producer of the barrels for the César artillery, said that they're going to reach in 2025, so next year, the monthly production rate that is equal to the yearly production rate in 2021. This is an obvious necessity. Not only does Ukraine need more of those howitzers, and not only has France found a couple of additional customers in the past, those barrels have a lifetime of a couple of thousand rounds, depending on the powder load. Afterwards, they might not immediately explode yet, but they'll get inaccurate. So over time, you need fresh barrels all the time if you want to use your artillery to its maximum extent. And there's a completely different requirement if you just do training a little bit than if you run a full-scale war where you shoot as much as you can. So this is great news for Ukraine, especially as they will obviously be the recipient of a lot of those barrels, which will improve their César artillery that they currently already have. Then we have news for the 12 Panzerhaubitze 2000. Those are the German self-propelled howitzers that Ukraine is going to receive, which was recently announced by Germany. Now we have the news that they are coming from Qatar. Qatar has bought 24 of those and is handing over half of them to Germany. Germany has bought them and is going to send them to Ukraine. Qatar, on the other hand, is getting the export permission for the RCH 155. That's the wheel-bound new German artillery system, which, according to my judgment, is the best artillery system in the world. I made a video about this on my German channel. I guess I should make a version for this channel as well. But if so, you'll see it in the future if people are interested in this as well. Then Latvia is handing over light fighting vehicles of British production. We're talking about the Scimitar. How many is unknown, but they had bought 123. So this would be an indication what they can hand over, how many. They're obviously not going to give all of them, but probably 10 to 20 of those seems to be a realistic amount. And we have news from the US that BAE Systems has been awarded a contract to produce additional Bradley fighting vehicles for the US Army. But while the text here says that production of more than 200 variants, because the stockpiles have been a modernized replacement for the Bradleys that the US government has provided to Ukraine, all of this could read that it's actually the restarting of the production line. I do not see anything different here, but when we see the numbers, 200 of them for just 440 million, it seems to be clear that we are talking about taking old Bradleys out of storage that are going to be modernized to a A4 variant in this context. So while it might have caused some hope that the production line would be reopened, which could then obviously help Ukraine, it doesn't seem to be the case, but we'll see in the long term. And finally, I have pictures from the Ukrainians training with the Leopard 1A5DK. I think it's the DK version, and here we finally see the protection they put up, and yeah, the Ukrainians really like their ERA, the Contact 1. We see it everywhere along the tank. It's spread all over here and in those pictures. But that was it from me for today for this situation report. If you like this report, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment in the comment section. What do you think about the current developments and the assassination attempt? Will it influence Trump in his decisions towards Ukraine? And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. But that's it from me for today. If this channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you, if you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.